Good evening, Bruchim Habayim, Rabotai. Welcome to another edition of our Thursday night's class. It's nice to be back. Sorry for inconveniencing people with 2 weeks of mandated vacation, we'll call it. Got to have an optimistic view on every circumstance in life. Baruch Hashem. But here we are. In this week's Parashat, we're going to read about Matan Torah. And if you read about Matan Torah, you would think that the Parashat would be called Matan Torah. No, that should be the highlight of the Parashat. Look at the context of the Parashat. The highlight is Aseret HaDibrot. And the Ashkenaz have a custom, and for the Sfaradim, not only don't we have a custom, we're not allowed to do this, but the Ashkenaz have a custom that they stand up by Kriyat Torah when they read Aseret HaDibrot. They stand. We hold not like that, because then it would be saying that one part of the Torah is holier than the other, which is not true. All words are equal, so that's why the Sfaradi custom was deliberately not to do that, as Rav Ovadia has a tshuva about. But that just is symbolic, and it's not a proof to anything, but it's symbolic. That's definitely the highlight of the parasha. Now it's time sensitive also. When we're in a time that la'aleinu people are sick and dying and all this craziness in the world, and especially in Eretz Yisrael, that our hearts are with them. Tonight, Israel, la'aleinu, it should stop already. They crossed the 5,000 people mark dying. Even in the Yom Kippur War, I don't think 5,000 people died. It's frightening. It's okay. And the good news is that this week, by Matan Torah, it says in Chazal, Yitrapu kol hacholaim, anybody who was sick, got healthy, was healed. All right, we once said a shiur, if that's the case, why did Moshe Rabbeinu still stutter? He should have gotten healthy. So, B'ezrat Hashem, this week, when Am Yisrael reads Aseret HaDibrot, Matan Torah, Yitrapu kol hacholaim, Hashem should help, that it should heal the whole Jewish nation, there should be no more sickness, B'ezrat Hashem. And it's not far-fetched. I heard myself, not Yidei Shliach Narei, from Maran Alav Yashiv Zitzel, that I went into him to ask him for a blessing for somebody who was very sick. This was a bunch of years ago, a lot of years ago right now. And he was in a very bad situation. And I was in Israel, and the person asked me, if you're in Israel, go to some rabbis, some Gdolim, Tzadikim, ask them for a blessing for me. So I went into Maran Alav Yashiv Zitzel, which I had the zchut to go into many times. And I told him, this man is sick, and he's Shomer Torah Mitzvot, very Talmid Chacham, Bal Chesed, and you should give him a blessing. So Rabbi Yashiv wasn't really the blessing type. And he said, I don't know what he needs a blessing for. I got scared. That almost sounded like a death sentence to me. What do you mean? That was frightening to me. I said, what do you mean? He's not well. He needs a blessing. So he said, no, so you should go to shul this week. It was like now, it was before Shabbat Parashat Yitro. Actually, remember, I flew back tonight, on a Thursday night, before Parashat Yitro, back to America. And he should hear Aseret HaDibrot. He should make sure he goes to a minyan that has a kosher Sefer Torah and a good Baal Koreh that he hears it clearly. And Yitrapu kol hacholaim, will be healthy. So I said, but that was by Ma'amad Al Sinai. He said, it's not true. Koach HaTorah is every time Am Yisrael reads it again. Ma'amad Al Sinai is not a one-time thing. Every day the Torah is a new koach. You should go to shul, be healthy. And by the way, Sof Maaseh, the guy beat the medical odds. They already said that his days are very numbered. And he's alive and well many, many years later. Healthier than most of us. It's hard to believe he was ever so sick at all. And now, of course, you could think, did Rabbi Yashiv mean that factually, or was that his way of giving him a blessing? Yeah, that might be discussed. But definitely there's a big chashivut, a big dusha, and the whole idea of Aseret HaDibrot. Besides, it's the foundation of Am Yisrael, of the Torah Kedosha. Aseret HaDibrot. First two Dibrot, the Jews heard directly from God. They weren't able to deal with it, but they heard it technically directly from God. And the parasha, anyway, doesn't get the name of Parashat Matan Torah or Parashat Aseret HaDibrot. what you would think. Parashat gets the name of a man who was an idol worshiper. Yitro. Right? That's the way it is. Chazal say, he went and worshipped every idol that existed. Not just an idol worshiper. He was a mahmir. He had to be yotzeh, all the chumrot, every idol. This one, that one, he tried them all. And that's who we named the parasha after. Of course, because he did tshuva afterwards, but why is that so important? And what's Hashem trying to teach us by naming a parasha that's be'etzim a parasha of Matan Torah after Yitro's name? Even if Yitro will say, we give him credit for his tshuva and his greatness and everything, and he ended up being the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu and v'chulei v'chulei. But with all of that, it wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu's whole purpose to be Moshe Am Yisrael and bring down the Torah and be the facilitator of the Torah. So the punchline, the real purpose is the Torah. So with Yitro's whole greatness, for sure the Torah comes first. So to understand this, we have to do what the Mesirat Yesharim says in the Hagdama, that sometimes there are things that are very known, but meirov yidiatam, because they're so known, b'meirayim nishkachim, quickly they're forgotten. The most obvious is normally the least known in a way, because it doesn't sound sophisticated. Even a lot of medical circumstances by people. Guy goes into a doctor and he has a simple thing, but the doctor right away, and I'm not saying this in a bad way because he's a brilliant man, starts thinking about rare viruses and rare this and rare. He tests him for 1,000,001 things, but the ABC, the simplest common things, he forgot about. That's what the Mesirat Yesharim says. Sometimes when somebody's in a situation or wants to get closer to Hashem on the positive note, so he looks for all these sophistications and he doesn't realize that could be Hashem's right there and he doesn't have to look far. Ki karov elecha davar me'od. Because Baruch Hu is very close to you, he's right by you. You don't have to go looking for so many different things. So what analyzes Yitro's personality? Yitro had many names. So that means, and the name, the Maharal has a whole piece on this, that a person's name really symbolizes who he was. Right? That's why Hashem told Adam HaRishon to call everything in the world names. Why did Hashem tell Adam HaRishon to call the names? Because he was testing Adam to see if Adam understood creation. What type of test is that? With today's names that they call people, it doesn't seem like a test at all. Right? But a girl's born, they give her a name of a flower. Like, what? She's not a flower, she's a human. And on the flip side, we give dogs and cats names of humans. Confused completely. I'll never forget, I was walking once in the Tayelet, a boardwalk in Netanya, and there was a lady, later on I found out because I got to know who her family is, elderly woman, she was in her 70s then. And she was a Moroccan woman. And I hear her screaming, like calling somebody, Moshiko, Boina, Moshiko, Boina. Moshiko is a nickname for Moshe. And I'm looking, it was at night, and there weren't that many people around, and I don't know, I didn't see no Moshiko. I'm looking to see who she's calling. So I went over there and I said, you need help? Are you looking for somebody in a building, in a store? You want me to go help you? I figured maybe she's elderly, she doesn't want to go, it's hard for her to walk. And she starts laughing. Now I'm getting insulted. I came to help you. What are you laughing at me for? And she tells me, no, she tells me in Hebrew, I'm calling my dog. He ran there onto the sand into the beach. So her dog became Moshiko. And I didn't ask her what her kids' names were at that point. But, could be she called one of her kids. I don't know what. Tal. Ital Shamayim Mishmanei Haaretz. Do. So that's when you got things backwards. So the Maharal says that a name really identifies the atzmiut, the person. That's why there's also a big hashpa'ah on a person and the name that's given to it. It's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, Hashem should give him a long life. If somebody comes into him for a blessing and doesn't have a name from the Tanakh, he says, I would love to bless you, but there's nobody to bless. Change your name to a name from the Tanakh, and I'll give you a blessing. Openly. And even within names of the Tanakh, Chacham Ben Zion has a whole tshuva on which names to use, which names not to use. For example, Chacham Ben Zion says not to use the name Rivka. Again, I'm not saying this is a fact. Nobody, each person should ask somebody who understands in these things his own personal questions. But I think I quoted once, Rav Sender Ehlinger told me that he heard from the Stipler, Zitzal, that the Stipler told him that unless it's not good to call a boy Moshe. And that doesn't sound so easy to understand. Moshe Rabbeinu, what do you mean? That should be the first name we should call every Jewish boy. Zichut Torat Moshe Avdi. And the Stipler said that Moshe is such a holy name that it brings down a very holy neshama to the kid. And unless the kid grows up, kulo b'kedusha, completely holy in Torah, he's never going to be able to be happy. He'll be depressed and confused and a lot of issues, emotional issues, mental issues. Because of the koach of the neshama that's going to come down just from naming of, the Stipler said, if you want to name a baby Moshe, name him Moshe after somebody else, a rabbi that was later on Moshe. Ad kedei kach. So Yitro had 7 names at least. Chazal has other opinions, but meaning he had multiple facets that Hashem considered what his personality was. And out of all those, we use the one, this week's Parashat, Yitro. So there has to be a reason why we call the Parashat on his name, and why Dafka, this name out of all the names. So tonight, Bli Neder, we're just going to quote a drasha, or parts of a drasha, that my uncle, Rabbi Nisim ben Rachel Zecher Tzadik v'Kadosh Livracha Zchuto Yagen Aleinu, said many, many years ago. At least 30, maybe more. And hopefully we could take from it something. Rabbi Nisim was very practical, right? Those of you who read his books that were translated and whatever, he was very down to tachlis. He didn't like lip service. Some things that, he wasn't into the feel-good movement. He wanted something practical to come out of his life and out of the message that he relayed to people. So this was his approach. When Yitro came to visit Moshe Rabbeinu in the desert, Chazal say, Moshe wasn't sure how he's supposed to deal with this visit of his father-in-law, technically. On one hand, it's his father-in-law, you should respect him. On the other hand, he was a goy. Not only he was goy, he was still b'cheskat of de'elilim. He still, he did tshuva, it happens to be, but it wasn't clear how much tshuva he did. And even if he did tshuva, still the tikkun of avodah zarah is a very big tikkun. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't sure how do you handle such a situation. It's somewhere in the middle. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to Moshe Rabbeinu to answer him specifically this dilemma. That's what Chazal say. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Ani Hashem shebarati et haolam. I'm God that created the world. Ani mekarev v'ani merachek. I bring close and I distance. And I'm asking you that you should go greet Yitro, and you should be mekarevim, you should bring him close, and show him respect, in other words. Chazal say, since Kivan Shazavta Mlucha, when Moshe Rabbeinu left to go to greet him, it made a movement. Moshe left, so Aaron came with him. If Aaron came with him, the rabbi said, wait a second. The Chachamim said, Moshe and Aaron are going somewhere. We also want to go. So they joined. Am Yisrael said, wait, Moshe, Aaron, and the Chachamim are going somewhere? So definitely we want to join. So they also joined. Thank you, Tzadik. And like this, it became a whole movement that Am Yisrael went to greet Yitro. So he was zocher lekavod gadol. He merited very big honor. Why? So Chazal teach us, midah keneged midah. Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu that since he left behind all the honor and fame and money that potentially he could have had and everything by being a priest or being a leader in Avodah Zarah, Kohen Midyan, he left being Kohen Midyan in order to come seek truth, in order to get closer to Hashem. Midah keneged midah, we have to leave the comforts of our home to go greet him and to show him honor. See how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu respects somebody who is willing to make a sacrifice of his own comforts in order to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are millions of people who went to greet him. Chazal say, Kol Yisrael. Kol Yisrael, the whole Jewish nation. The lowest number in the calculation of Chazal was that there were 600,000 men of between 20 and 60. If you do the math, that's at least 3 million people. That was the lowest number that went to greet him, probably much more. And Chazal say in the Midrash Rabbah, Chav Zayin Bet, Kavod Gadol Itkabed Yitro Ba'oto Sha'ah. Great honor Yitro got at that time. Great honor. What was the schut, what was the merit that he had that brought him to the point that Hashem himself comes down to Moshe Rabbeinu to tell him, to cause that he should get such great honor? What's the punchline? What was the schut? Where did he get it from? Where did all this come from? Two words. Mevakesh emet. He was a truth seeker. Why did Yitro serve all the idols in the world? He was bored. He wasn't bored. He was a very intelligent man. He didn't go from one craziness to the next. The answer is, Chazal say, he went to one idol worshipping movement. Very quickly he saw it's fake. There's no emet there. There's no truth there. So he left it. But he needs truth in his life. So he went to the next one. So there's also no truth there. And like this, he went from religion to religion, we'll call it, looking for the truth. That means in his DNA, he was a Mevakesh Emet. He was a person that was looking for the truth. And that brought him to the point that, as we said, the Yalkut Shimoni says in Remes Reish Samachet, Lo iniach avodah zara achat ba'olam shelo avada. He didn't leave even one avodah zara in the world that he didn't worship, meaning he tried it all just to look for the truth. He was a Mevakesh Emet. No. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw somebody's looking for the truth. Now, he didn't know about Hashem. He didn't know about Moshe Rabbeinu, about Am Yisrael, so he couldn't get to that conclusion. He knew about Am Yisrael because he was by the Eitzah of Paro, but he didn't know about the spiritual element of Am Yisrael. So Hashem saw that he was looking for the truth. So Hashem says, if you look for the truth, I'll bring the truth to you. Hashem made that Moshe Rabbeinu should have to run away from Paro, get to Midian. He got to Midian exactly when Yitro's daughters came to take care of the animals. And then Chazal said they wanted to drown Yitro's daughters in the well because they were angry at their father because the father was the chief priest and he resigned. Recently, John wasn't the first pope that resigned. Yitro was the first pope that resigned. He beat him to it. And they were angry. What do you mean? You're our leader. How'd you resign like that? Today we riot and protest that leaders should resign. Look at the difference. Then people wanted leadership. They were angry and they were going to kill his kids for it. They were going to take it out on his kids. Can't leave people like that. Moshe Rabbeinu saved them. Moshe Rabbeinu saved them to the point that he also got attached to them. And he married a daughter. So look what a schut he had. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that he was looking for the truth. Hashem said, if you're really looking for the truth, I'm going to bring the truth to you. Not just am I going to bring the truth to you, I'm going to bring you the closest thing that you can get to God. That your own son-in-law is going to be the only person that was able to speak to God directly, alive, and come back alive. Not once, not twice. That's the koach bikush haemet. That's the power of looking for truth. Now, lichora, up to here, it sounds very simple. But there's a nice quote, I don't know who it comes from. It's not so simple to be simple. The last thing in the world that anybody today is looking for is the truth. Today's society dictates to us, don't confuse me with the facts, I have an agenda. This is my agenda, I don't care about anything else, what happened, what didn't happen, what's true, what's lies, nothing makes a difference anymore. He told us the opposite extreme of that. He was the mchapes emet. He was the greatest truth seeker. He wanted to know the truth, even if it means changing ways and opinions more than once. But he needed to know 50%. that he has to get to the truth. No. But it was a lot more than that. Moshe Rabbeinu was away, all right, and he has a kid. And his first child he calls Gershom. Why does he call his child Gershom? Higer hayiti be'eretz nochriya. I'm a stranger in a foreign land. Imagine somebody lives in America. We're all strangers in this land, and we're not loved here either. In case anybody didn't remember, just look. We got thousands of people a day dying from one disease or the other, whichever way you want to look at it. And the president's busy with Iran and Israel. And not helping either one. Helping Iran destroy Israel. That's what he's busy with. You have a country in crisis. You have people dying all day long. Focus on that. Foreign policy, the hate for Jews. Hayu tzarei lerosh. The Midrash says in Eicha, kol hametzer liYisrael na'asa rosh. Whoever causes the Jews problems, it becomes powerful. Unbelievable. And nobody's looking for the truth. Nobody cares to know the truth. Moshe Rabbeinu was a foreigner in the land, and a foreigner in the land that he was able to make a difference. He made a difference, A, in his wife, and B, later on, he was an indirect cause of many of the people of Midian also joining the Jewish nation. And with all of that, what comes out? Look at this, Dvar Pele. He calls his son stranger. Why? Chazal say he wanted to remind himself every single day, I'm not part of these people. Ki ger hayiti be'eretz nochriya. I'm a stranger in this land. This is not my home. By us, when we say he's not my president, that's not a political thing, or an anti-whatever campaign. These people don't deserve names. It's a deep understanding. Nobody's our president. Our president will be when Mashiach Tzidkenu comes and we have a melucha, we have the kingdom of Hashem back in the way it is. Higer hayiti be'eretz nochriya. So Moshe Rabbeinu took preventive measures to protect himself. Ad kedei kach. But it goes a lot further. Vayishma Yitro, that's the way the Torah starts. Yitro heard. Let's talk about hearing. David HaMelech thanks Hashem in Tehillim Perek Mem Pasuk Zayin, and he says, Oznaim karitali. Thank you, Hashem, what? That you gave me ears. You made me ears. Karita really means to make a hole. So it means ears that work, that I could hear. What's the big deal? The animals that have ears. That's what. And Tehillim is Kodesh Kodashim to the point that David HaMelech asked that it should be considered reading Tehillim like as if we learned the hardest parts of the Torah, and Hashem agreed with him. So it means it's a big thing to Tehillim, to every word in Tehillim. So if David HaMelech went and wrote the whole praise to Hashem, Oznaim Karita, he gave me ears, that means there's a big deal about it. It's not just ears that people have. So the rabbis explain us that David HaMelech it wasn't only to thank Hashem that he had physical ears. As we said, even animals have. David HaMelech thanked Hashem that I have ears and I actually use them. I actually listen. I actually learn. A lot of people have ears. As the saying goes, it goes in one ear and out the other. It doesn't help them. If anything, the ears cause them damage sometimes. The HaMelech said, Oznaim karitali, you gave me ears that I heard, that I actually was able to benefit from. That was the Hoda'at HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amela. We understand what Rashi says at the beginning of the Parashat. Rashi brings down a Chazal. Vayishma Yitro ma shmua shemar ba. What did Yitro hear that he came? Why did he decide to join Am Yisrael? So Rashi writes, Kriyat Yam Suf u'milchemet Amalek. He heard about the miracle of Kriyat Yam Suf, and he heard about the war of Amalek against Am Yisrael. So Meila Kriyat Yam Suf, okay, that was the biggest miracle in history, fine. But Milchemet Amalek, the Jews always had wars against them. That's not That's a reason to want to be part of the Jews. That's a reason to want to run away from the Jews. Nobody wants to join a persecuted nation. Do you voluntarily join a persecuted nation? That's not what so what are you going to say? The victory. And victories have consequences too in general. It's not, I was at war and I won. How many casualties along the way? In the Jewish view, we don't want to be at war in the first place. We're not looking to be at war and win. We're looking never to have war. Shalom bimromav. That's why we're the biggest peace seekers in the world. So what did he hear? Besides, what's the connection between Kriyat Yam Suf and Milchemet Amalek? What does one have to do with the other? And if we're talking about miracles, so it should have said 10 makot also. And many other miracles that the Jews had. So it's not just a quote of miracles. It's specifically these two. So what was specifically in these two that he heard that's what made him decide to join Am Yisrael and leave all the Avodah Zarah? So the answer is very simple. We read it last week in the Parashat Naz Yashir, we read every morning. Shamu amim yirgazim. The nations of the world heard about Yetziat Mitzrayim, meaning primarily about Kriyat Yam Suf. Not only heard, according to Chazal, they saw it. Every water in the world split, every liquid in the world split. And as a result, yirgazim, they got scared. They were fearful. They saw that God controls the world, that there's a power of God in the world. So Yitro made an observation. You see there's a God in the world, and you see this God chose the Jewish nation, and he's making miracles for them and only them. What do you do with that information after seeing it? You saw it clearly, with your own eyes you saw it, not stories, you saw it clear, black and white. What do you do with it? So Yitro saw that not only didn't it affect the nations of the world to come join the Jewish nation, it caused jealousy by the nations of the world that Amalek went on a suicide mission to fight the Jews, knowing that God's on their side and he's going to lose. Right? Amalek didn't think he was going to win. He just saw that Hashem wiped out a nation for the Jewish nation to get out. So he knew he was going to lose. That's why Chazal say, Mashallah bat yarot tachat. He knew he was getting burnt. But it was a suicide bomber, the first suicide bomber historically. He started the movement to suicide bombing. He was willing to risk his life, to die, out of jealousy for Am Yisrael that Hashem watches over Am Yisrael. But idiot, why do you have to die over jealousy? Just join him. Isn't that a lot better of a way to go about it? Why do you have to fight him? Join him. You fight him and get hurt. Why fight him and get hurt? Just become one of them. Join him. When Yitro saw that, Yitro said, if a person can get to such a low level that he could see the truth to his face, he could see Hashem's hand to his face, he could see the way Hashem protects Am Yisrael to his face, and not only not get closer to Hashem, but run away from Hashem, that means it's dangerous to be a goy now. There's going to be nothing human left of these people. They're going to lose Tzelem Enosh. Ma shmua shama, everybody heard. Shamu amim yirgazu. Uba, and made him come. Kriyat Yam Suf, the miracle of Kriyat Yam Suf, and that after all of that, there was still Milchemet Amalek. He said, if it's possible to fight the Jews after that, and something sick with these people. Sick, I don't want to be. Let me join the Jews. I said once in a shiur, I don't know if it was here or somewhere else, but I had, for about a year, I would say, maybe a little longer than a year, I used to take my uncle, that was just kind of like his driver, to different shiurim in Israel. Once we were going to shiur somewhere up north, and we passed by a very popular intersection. It's called Tzomet Golani. If you know Israel, you might know where that is. It's a big hitchhike center. It connects all different parts of the northern part of Israel. If you ever went to Miron from Jerusalem, then you passed by Tzomet Golani probably. Definitely before Kvish 6. So Tzomet Golani is a intersection, has a service area there. And there's a very unfortunate thing. Hopefully one day it'll change. There's a McDonald's there that sells basar v'chalav. It's hard to believe in Israel. There's open places like that sell basar v'chalav. My uncle he was very thirsty. He said we should stop. He said, don't go into McDonald's to buy a drink, even a closed bottle. It's Chilul Hashem, can't walk in there. There was another store there also attached to the gas port. Go in there and buy something to drink, I'm thirsty. Fine. I get out of the car, I go. It wasn't my car. My uncle's yeshiva had a car, and we used to use that car. I come back, I don't know, how long does it take to buy a drink? 2 minutes, 3 minutes? And I see my uncle at his best. A few people around him, and he's giving a speech in a parking lot of a service area. I was curious. At first I brought him his drink, and that was my excuse to stay, to hear what's going on. And I hear a guy arguing with him, exactly the opposite argument that you would expect. Normally, I used to hear my uncle trying to convince people to take tefillin and tzitzit and to use it. Here, I hear a guy arguing, begging him, give me tzitzit, give me tefillin, give it. And my uncle's like testing him if he's real, or what do you need it for? What do you want it for? And I remember what this guy told my uncle. It stayed etched in my brain. I was a young teenager. A young teenager at the end of my teen years, actually. He told him, let me tell you something, Rabbi. Come, let's go on a walk. He walked with him maybe 300 yards, if that. And there was a group of boys and girls. I don't know how old they were, but the oldest looked like maybe 15, 16. Smoking, drugs. And he pointed to them and he says, I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old at home. And if this is what these kids are doing, that's because they don't have Torah in their life. I'm scared for my children. Because I don't know if I believe in Hashem or not. I don't know if I believe in mitzvot or not. But what I do know is a fact. In the Chavedi schools, they're not doing this. And in the yeshivot, they're not doing this. So for the sake of my children's future, that's where I want them to be. I'm not saying we don't have our own problems, we do, but it's 0.001% versus whatever percentage in the other places. And he's begging for tzitzit and tefillin, begging. That's a person who saw a situation, assessed it quickly, and came to a conclusion. Many people see situations in life. Some even assess them, but they don't come to a conclusion. On the contrary, they double down on their stupidity. Like, you're already stupid. No, now we're going to make it even worse. We're going to become more liberal. But you see, it's a bankrupt system. It's failing the world. No, we're going to continue doing it. Yitro's gadlut was that he was able to see a situation, assess it, come to a conclusion, but here's the key, and make a move, and actually make a difference. Yitro realized that without hearing and absorbing what you hear in life, a person, lo aleinu, can get himself into a situation that'll fall into the lowest madriga ever. Hebrew, we say a matzav ayom v'nora, a terrible, terrible, tragic situation. That's what he learned from it, and that's what created him. So now back to David HaMelech to explain what David HaMelech told HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chazal say, Mishnah Avod, Perek Vav, B'chol yom vayom, every day, bat kol yotzet ma'ar chorev, a voice from heaven comes out from Mar Chorev, u'machezet v'omeret, and pronounces or announces, or whatever you want to say, Oy lahem labriot me'elbona shel Torah, woe to the creations of the world from the embarrassment of the Torah. Any of you heard this bat kol today? Did you hear it? I didn't. I'm not embarrassed to admit. I didn't hear it. But Chazal say b'chol yom vayom yotzet, every day it comes out. That means it came out today. So if it came out, why didn't we hear it? And if we can't hear it for whatever reason, so why does it come out? So Nissim Zitzal writes in the Sefer Netivei, it's muchach that you could hear it. You just have to have oznaim karitali, you have to have ears that work spiritually, properly, that you could hear the bat kol coming out. If you don't have ears that are holy enough to hear a bat kol, so the problem's not with the bat kol, the problem's with you. Fix your ears and you'll hear it. If you put noise cancellation headphones and somebody's trying to talk to you, you don't hear him. Did the other person not talk? The other person spoke. You have headphones covering your ears. You didn't hear what he had to say. The same thing in Ruchaniyut. Bose didn't invent noise cancellation headphones. The Yetzer Hara invented it. We put Kedusha cancellation headphones. We occupy ourselves with so much stupidity that there's no room anymore for the ears to hear anything holy. There's nothing left. I'll give you an example. Somebody can't see well. Majority of us at one point or the other deal with that in life. Between glasses, lenses, LASIK, and everything else involved. Those who don't are blessed. It's a question in halacha if it's considered a mum to wear glasses even. But nafkamina for Kohen or la'atid lavo for Bechor in the Bet Mikdash, if you can do the avodah. No. So a guy realizes one day, I can't see 20 feet ahead, it's not safe. Can't drive like that, if it's a kid in school, can't see the board, I don't know. Besides, it's not, what type of quality of life is that? So he goes into the eye doctor. The eye doctor tells him, okay, sit down, let me check you. He says, check what? I'm telling you, I can't see. So he says, all right, but let me check what prescription you need. Let's see if you're nearsighted, farsighted, what's the problem, how much? He says, doctor, you think I have time for this? Just write me a prescription. Who cares what it says on it? Doctor tells him it doesn't work like that. But imagine the doctor would have wrote him the highest prescription possible. Did he help him anything? Not only isn't he going to see, it's going to harm his eyes along the way also. It's going to cause him vision damage. And he goes and he takes the prescription and buys the glasses and puts them on, and not just buys them, he buys brand name, the most expensive. When he puts them on, he just spent $1,000, $2,000 on the glasses, and he can't see anything. And he starts cursing out the doctor. What a lowlife, a crook. He gave me a prescription, it doesn't work, it this, that. Of course it doesn't work. The problem's not by the doctor, the problem's by you. If you would have followed what he told you and did the test and checked what you need, he would have gave you the right prescription with the right amount, you would have got it made right, and you would see beautifully. Am Yisrael is going through a lot of tzar right now. A lot of tzar right now. It's hard to even talk about it. Today in the morning, a person in Israel, in Pisgat Zev, near Yerushalayim, 2 days ago it was raining. His son went outside. There was a little puddle in front of the house. He fell face forward into the puddle. He drowned in a puddle. The whole puddle was 6 inches. And today in the morning he died. Mita Meshuna. He says, you ever heard of such a thing before? You ever heard of somebody drowning in a puddle? I never heard of such a thing before. It's crazy stories. Story after story after story. It's not normal. It's the samar nasal rosh. The hair could stand from just in what goes on in a day. I said last week in the recording, the head of Zaka in Eretz Yisrael, Yudah Meshli Zahav, unfortunately he's not the only one, just he went public with the story. And just in the past few weeks alone, he sat Shiva 3 times. His father, his mother, and his brother. Crazy. These are not normal stories. This is crazy. Currently in Israel, we have over 30 pregnant women from the Orthodox Jewish community. Not that I'm saying that to differentiate from any Jew. Every Jewish life is important, and every life is important. But I'm just saying from the Orthodox Jewish towns, because that's what we know about. You know, that people talk about it because of Tehillim and other things, that are in critical condition in hospitals in Israel. Fighting for their lives probably with COVID. And it's not for their lives, it's 2 lives. It's them and the baby. The ones that are in more advanced pregnancy, they could do maybe the C-section, save the baby. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. These are crazy things. So Hashem's talking to us. And I paid attention to a pattern, and I'm being very cautious with my words because I'm not making any predictions or saying any reasoning or anything. I'm not God's spokesman, let's make that very clear. But originally when this whole COVID thing started, what did they say? And not just say, what did we see? It targeted the elders, people over 60 with pre-existing medical conditions. The past few months, what changed? It's targeting youngsters, and not just youngsters. 30 to 50 are the majority of the sick people in Israel right now. It's targeting females, which it didn't target before. pregnant woman in a worse way than regular females, which didn't happen at all until now. And this week in Israel, they had 3 cases of loss of life of children. Talking about a 2-year-old was one of them. Now, I don't care if they had pre-existing or didn't have pre-existing medical conditions. What does this mean? First, Hashem said, I'm going to hold the elders responsible because they're old, they're smart, they should have known better. That didn't work. He said, maybe I'll knock brains into the younger generation. That didn't work. He said, okay, at least kids are pure. There should be a kapara for Am Yisrael. But how much more blood has to be spilled before we say, Rebbeinu Shalom, die, enough. We got the message. We know you're in control. We know it's all you. We accept it for the way it is. We don't have ta'anot on you. We don't have complaints, God forbid. That's oy lahem labuyot me'elbona shel Torah. The Torah is insulted and says, I have the answer. Why don't you listen to what I say? I'm giving you the eitzah. Why don't you listen to what I have to say? But instead, the Chokhmat HaGoyim tells us, you know what the solution is? First, we try to force you to wear a mask. That didn't help, so now we're going to tell you to wear 2 masks. Soon it's going to be a gas mask. Honestly, that I kind of agree with 2 masks. Definitely since January 20th. These new people that think they're in control of the country stink so much, you have to wear 2 masks. You can't breathe otherwise. Their value scale, what's important to them, stinks so badly. That's why Hashem's putting in their head these crazy things to show that they should expose themselves, what they're really about. No value for life, no value for nothing. What's value? Diplomacy. Diplomacy, yeah. What's diplomacy? Let's talk about things and get nowhere. That's diplomacy. I don't want any commitment. I don't want to have to do anything. I don't want I want free for all. Diplomacy, yeah. We see in different cities in the United States that they defunded police. The social worker system didn't work in murder scenes so far. Hasn't been proven that effective. In case you don't believe me, check the murder stats. That's diplomacy. Diplomacy. It's called a wake-up call. Hello? Something's going on. And what goes on in the world is one thing. But when it hits Eretz Yisrael already, that's the land that Hashem protects. Eretz Asher Einei Hashem Elokecha Ba. That's already a big wake-up call. And I've been saying this the past 2 weeks, and even though until now I was very cautious not to talk this way. But now already it's crisis mode, and in crisis mode sometimes you got to say things a little different. And we live our lives like nothing's going on. Business as usual. Yeah, it's one big party. I'm going, yeah, I'm coming there, I'm this, I'm that. What are your Purim plans? What are your Pesach plans? Everything's closed in New York. Let's find a way to escape to. Life as usual, like nothing's happening. Yeah. Israel is 1,200 people right now, as we're talking, fighting for their lives. Every breath is a miracle. But so what? Who cares? Hashem says, "Im av ani ayeh kvodi." If I'm your father, then where's the respect? If somebody la'aleinu v'la'lechem had a brother on a deathbed, would he even think of continuing his life as normal, partying all day? Wouldn't cross his mind for a second. Am Yisrael are our brothers. These are our brothers and sisters. It's not a joke. These are our brothers and sisters that are suffering, and suffering beyond. And remember, every life is not just a life that's lost, which that alone is enough, period. It's an entire family that's destroyed. A father means children that have no father, a mother, children that have no mother. There's brothers, there's sisters, there's parents that lost kids. There's a whole circle of people around that their life is now destroyed. With problems and post-trauma that's lingering on for years later, and who knows how many other issues, down to the logistic issues of finance and other things. This is a big midat adin. And now we can understand clearly why the Amoraim said in the Gemara, Yetev v'lach mineh, they don't want to be alive, Yimot HaMashiach. They don't want to have to withstand the test of emunah, the test of faith before Mashiach comes. This is the test. But the answer is Oznaim karitali. So have ears, listen to what Hashem wants. And if you listen to what Hashem wants, then because Baruch Hu loves us, everything can be solved in a second. Rav Zilberstein brought down a couple of weeks ago in a shiur that, I don't remember the source, I'm sorry, you'll forgive me. But the concept comes from the Khatam Sofer, but he brought a very specific source for this detail. Before Mashiach comes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring machalat to the world, the sickness to the world that nobody's going to know anything about, right? This fits the profile perfectly. And, when we finally thought we know something about it, then we have the British strain and this strain and that strain. So we're back to square one again. But it doesn't end there. We don't believe in being pessimists. And he's going to also bring refuat shelo haya ba'olam. Refuat that wasn't used before. This Pfizer and Moderna vaccine is a system that in vaccines wasn't used commonly prior to this. Till now we used vaccines as mutated viruses. This is the first mass scale genetic changing attempt. Hashem should help it. Everything should go peacefully for everybody. So Chazal spoke about this clearly in advance. It's a nivuah, clearly, nivuah. Zilberstein actually said, he was the first gadol that said clearly that Chazal say that tragedy hits the world because of sin. So if that's the case, we need forgiveness for sin. If we're going to have to do tshuva for every averah we did in our whole life, like we said on Kippur, just to count them, yichle hazman ve'im lo yichlu, in Vidui HaGadol. The time will be up and we won't finish counting them. So it's impossible. So we need a quick fix. So what's the quick fix? The Gemara says, Kol Shomer Shabbat ki hilchato. If you keep Shabbat ki hilchato, like the halacha says to keep Shabbat, not the way your mood says. Even if you did avodah zarah kedor enosh, avodah zarah kedor, the worst avodah zarah, mochalim lo kol avonotav. Hashem forgives all your sins. That means if you want to know what the real solution to all this craziness in the world right now is, Shmirat Shabbat. But Shmirat Shabbat, the Gemara doesn't say Kol HaShomer Shabbat. Ki hilchato, based on the way the halacha says to keep Shabbat. You have to learn Hilchot Shabbat. There has to be a chizuk in learning Hilchot Shabbat. Kvod Shabbat also. Oneg Shabbat. I'll tell you Dvar Pele. So I got a message one day from an acquaintance, and he writes to me that he was diagnosed, he has COVID. It's very common, unfortunately, again now in the United States. And for the first few days, he was pretty much fine. He had some fever and that, but nothing serious. Now he's starting to feel a little bit harder to breathe and whatever. He wants to know who's a good doctor to consult with. When is the point that it's not safe to stay home anymore? So I heard the details, whatever, and I told him. He was very thankful. I told him, listen, if you don't reach the doctor, call me back and I'll message him directly. He'll call you right away. He's a good person. And he has a lot of knowledge in this. Fine. I hung up the phone with him. And I was looking at my phone right after I hung up with him to see if there was any messages in the few minutes I was on the phone with him that I missed that are urgent to answer. And I see on the broadcast of one of the synagogues that I'm affiliated with, which is a Hasidic synagogue, that the owner of the synagogue posted that he's looking for somebody, if somebody's willing to sponsor the herring for the Kiddush until Pesach. So he wrote there. Now let me tell you something. I don't like herring. Not only don't I like herring, just the smell of it makes me leave the building. Not the room, the building. I can't, that's one of my red lines in life. There's certain things that are, herring's one of them. There's nothing personal. The Hasidim get angry at me when I say this. For them, they think it's the best food in the world, so God bless. I don't, not pink, not red, not this, no way, shape, or form. In no variation. My mother's side, my grandfather's a Holocaust survivor. He came from Hungary or whatever, over there, Hungary, over there, herring was a big deal, I guess. And he used to make, he still does, Hashem should give him a longer life. It's at that age, you have to daven extra. He makes many siyumim all the time. He's a huge Talmid Chacham. Every few days he makes a siyum on a masechet. And he makes herring and kichlach, they call it, some sort of cracker. It's a dusty cracker. That's my way of describing it. And mashke, and something to drink. But mashke doesn't mean like by us. scotch, tequila, whatever. They have something that they call I don't know how to pronounce it in Yiddish, but it's the equivalent of 96. It's 96 proof. It's enough to kill you practically. I don't know how you drink that. It seems like in some countries that they lived in, it was so cold that this was their way of their blood not freezing on them. I don't know what it was, but this comes from somewhere or the other, this thing. But this is not for human consumption. Be careful. Yeah. It's dangerous. It could burn your insides. It's not the herring, in my opinion, also. But that I get into too much trouble if I say so. Yeah, such a high alcohol content. That's not. You got to be careful with it. So he used to take it very personal, and I didn't. He said, "I'm making a siyum." And thank God his wife's Moroccan, so she used to make some Moroccan food also. So I had something to join the siyum with every siyum. But so I see this other chat. Naturally, honestly, I wouldn't even look at it. I would just slide right by. Not that I don't give. I love giving all day and all night. But it's so not relatable to me that I wouldn't even pay attention that he's actually asking for money. I just see the word herring and skip. Next. It's Hashem Mamish blessed me. I actually looked at it a second time. So he's writing for the shul. The shul doesn't have money, tight budget, and they make kiddush every Shabbat morning, which is a beautiful thing. They don't have money for it. I said to myself, no, if I donate a bottle of scotch or a case of scotch, it's a nice thing. But I also like scotch. So it's not L'Shem Shamayim. I want to have a drink with my friends Shabbat morning. It's a good deed, but that's where it ends. So here's something that not only don't I like, I resent. To the point that I won't even stay for Kiddush. My incentive is nobody should donate it, then I could stay for Kiddush. But to them, that's their Oneg Shabbat, that's what they enjoy. And Oneg Shabbat is part of keeping Shabbat Kilchato, and that brings Mechilat Avonot. I said, Rebbeinu Shalom, I'm giving him the money in full, whatever he asked for, no questions asked. And it should be a flash lema for this guy who just called me. I called the guy. I didn't call him. I WhatsApped him. He has my credit card on file in the shul. Baruch Hashem. I told him, charge me that amount plus a few dollars, and it's on me. Don't worry about it. So that should be for a flash lema. As I got a response from him, he responded to me in a voice note saying, thank you very much, and whatever. I guess that's good fundraising, whatever you want to call it. Maybe a minute later, this gentleman who called me originally calls me back. He says, I spoke to the doctor, he told me a few things, whatever, thank God I don't need the hospital. I said, okay, but follow up with me, I'm nervous about you now. By the next morning, he called me and told me I'm feeling perfectly fine, like nothing ever happened. Now don't turn this into a segula of herring, please, nobody get any ideas in your head. In today's crazy world, you have to give disclaimers on every story. But soon there'll be a segula posted on the Facebook rabbi saying, Facebook segula rabbi saying, donate herring. But my point in the story is, when you mechabed the Shabbat, not for you, for Rabbim, for everybody. And not on your terms and the way you like it, the way they like it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Mochalim lo, Hashem forgives. When Hashem forgives, so there's good news. That it brings good things to Klal Yisrael. And we need a big chizuk in Shmirat Shabbat. We need a big, big chizuk in Shmirat Shabbat. And believe it or not, you would think that in Oneg Shabbat, that we wouldn't need a chizuk in. That's pleasure, right? It's to enjoy Shabbat. We need a big chizuk in Oneg Shabbat also. Yeah. It's amazing. During the week, a person goes to a restaurant, spends $500-600 on dinner with him and his wife, doesn't think twice. Thursday, when he's going grocery shopping, he looks to see if something's on sale. During the week, it's on your bill. On Thursday, it's on Hashem's bill. It's for Shabbat. It should be just the opposite. On Monday night, go get it on sale. For Shabbat, buy the biggest and the best. What do you care? It's God's bill anyway. That means even in the Oneg Shabbat we get stingy. It's a sickness. That's not being Shomer Shabbat ki ilchato. Really, I should talk more about the Shmirat Shabbat part, learning Ilchot Shabbat, which of course is of utmost importance. But the reason why I'm saying this is because Rabbi Shol Salant already teaches us in Yisrael based on the Gemara of Gadol Ansho Shel Lavan Me'onsho Shel Tchelet, that the easier a mitzvah is to do, the more Hashem gets upset if you don't do it. Kavyachol. So if Oneg Shabbat is something that instinctively you should want to do, so if you don't do it, then Hashem gets even more upset about it. Chod Shabbat is harder for you, so at least there's a limud zchut. I don't know what, I'm not sure what limud zchut, but there's some sort of limud zchut for that. But for that you need ozen shomat. You have to have an ear that listens. Oznaim karitali. Shlomo HaMelech says something in Mishlei that's very out of character, because it seems like he threatened, and Shlomo HaMelech wasn't in the threat business. Shlomo HaMelech writes in Mishlei Tedvav, Sonei tochachat yamut. In those words, somebody who hates Musar should drop dead. That's what it says. That's very out of character. That's not the way Mishlei was written. Mishlei is a very optimistic, positive message. What's he say? He's cursing people? God forbid, right? He wouldn't be Shlomo HaMelech if he cursed people. So obviously it doesn't mean the way I just translated it. So what's he saying? So it's a very famous story with the Kloisenberger Rebbe's itself. Yagen Aleinu. That once he was sitting in the Bet Midrash, and it was Friday night, and they were doing Kabbalat Shabbat by the Chadodi. And there was a boy in the yeshiva, he picked up his eyes, he saw there was a boy in the yeshiva that was sitting there, and he was talking. Well, it happens. You should never do it. It's a wrong thing to talk in shul, but people make mistakes. And somebody sitting near him turned to him, not, that's an avera, in the most gentle, loving, nice way, and said, if you don't mind, it's the middle of the Chadodi, it's bothering me. If you want to talk, but do it outside. And this boy looked back at the guy who told him that and said, who are you to tell me what to do? I'm not going anywhere. This boy didn't live in Israel, even though the Kloisenberg Yeshiva was in Israel. He came from Belgium. He lived in Belgium. His father was the wealthiest Kloisenberger Chassid, the biggest donor to the Kloisenberger Rebbe. And he sent his son to the Kloisenberger Rebbe's yeshiva to learn by his Rebbe's yeshiva in Israel. So this is the rich boy from the rich family who's the big donor to the Chassidut. Kloisenberger Rebbe called him in Motzei Shabbat and told him, go on a flight tonight back home. Over here you have no place anymore. And he says, what did I do wrong? Why are you throwing me out? And the Kloisenberger Rebbe told him, because of what happened last night by the Chadodi. So he told the Rebbe, he says, I don't understand what, 3/4 of the yeshiva at one point or the other spoke during davening. So every boy who speaks during davening you throw out? No. So why are you picking me out? What do you want from me? So he said, the problem, I'm not throwing you out because you spoke during davening. He says, I'm telling you to go home because somebody was willing to offer you a helping hand to guide you to stop talking and you weren't willing to listen to what he had to say. He said, at the moment a person is not willing to listen, there's nothing to do with him anymore. So there's nothing to do with you here. So go home. So I'm not throwing you out either. It's just simply I have nothing to offer you. So go home. And the boy who was the biggest donor's son called his father, and the father called the Rebbe. And the Rebbe told the father the same thing. He said, it doesn't make a difference if you never donate to me again, if you disown me as your Rebbe, whatever you want. But the fact is, I have a yeshiva to teach. Somebody who's not willing to listen will never learn. So he's just tying up a bed for no reason, he should go home. And he went home. Later on, this boy said, not only didn't it cause him to break, today you can't do that anymore, a kid would break, would become a goy. But in those days, the kids were still able to take Musa. He said it made him a big Talmid Chacham. It was a wake-up call for him. Wait a second. Why am I not willing to listen? Why am I not willing to hear what somebody else has to say? So, and I don't know the end of the story, but there is an end to the story, by the way. At one point, he came back to the Kloisenberg Rebbe, and the Kloisenberg Rebbe made a big deal out of it, that he took the Musa and changed his life around. But the B'cholam Wasserman has a very famous question. It's brought down in Kovetz Ha'arot in Yivamot in the Akdama. B'cholam Wasserman says he doesn't understand. Emunah is a big thing, right? People work their whole lives to get their Emunah. 1,000 times before you get to a glimpse of what Emunah is. Literally, that wasn't an exaggeration. If Emunah is such a big thing, and it's one of the mitzvot of the Torah, it's the beginning of that Aseret Dibrot that we're going to read this week, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, So how could it be when a boy is 13 years old, aka a baby, 13-year-old, is a kid? How can we expect him that he's obligated to keep that mitzvah? He's a child. Maybe somebody who's 75 and went through life and learned a lot and is knowledgeable, and maybe he's not going to understand the Emunah a little bit. But a kid, he's 13, what does he know? He knows his games. Fortnite, that's what he knows. Not tick, whatever it's called. Ticks in his head. He knows Emunah. He knows Emunah. How can you expect him to know Emunah? Abu Chanan says that the answer is very simple. He says there's many levels in Emunah. A high level in Emunah, of course, it takes many years. He said, but the basis of Emunah is a no-brainer. And he gives a mashal to it. It's a parable. The parable is, because the guy's hungry, and he's walking in a place, on a street, and it's empty. There's nothing around, no stores, no nothing. He's walking, he's hungry, he's thirsty. Suddenly he sees a nice house and a big estate. And he goes and he walks up the driveway, comes to the front door, opens it, it's unlocked, goes into the fridge, takes out food, eats, drinks, sitting in the kitchen, having a good time. The homeowner shows up at home and sees a guy, calls the cops. Cops arrest him for trespassing. He tells the cops, I don't understand why you're arresting me. Trespassing is going into somebody else's property. How am I supposed to know it's somebody else's property? Who would you side with in court? I think, we have a lawyer, you could ask him. I think we would side with the common sense. If there's a mention, it's somebody's property. No, I think we would side with that and convict him of trespassing. I don't even think the biggest brilliant lawyer in the world would be able to find a way out of this one. Abu Chanan says, no, Hashem made a world and everything's running. There's a sun and a moon and the sun's not falling, the moon's not falling, and everything's in place and everything's rotating, and the waves come perfectly to the shore and stop right there. Gvul natan lahem, Hashem gave a border to the water, doesn't flood the world. Everything's running perfectly. So yeah, even a 13-year-old, when he walks around, understands somebody owns this. This is not a free-for-all. Mi barat kol ela, who created all this? Like Avraham Avinu asked when he was 3, not 13. And that's why we can demand of a 13-year-old emunah, faith. No. Chazal say that after 120, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be Tovei Adam Badin. He's going to come to a person and demand from him. Listen to what he's going to demand from him. Why didn't he learn Torah at night? Thank God we're sitting here learning Torah, so at least we'll be able to say we did. This is what he's going to demand. Why didn't he learn Torah at night? So the Zohar asks on this, how could Hashem say that? The person's going to say, what do you mean? I was sleeping at night. Back in the day, it wasn't like now with lights and electricity. At night they went to sleep. When it was light, daytime, when it was light outside, that's when they were awake. When it was dark, there was nothing to do. They couldn't function. Comes the Zohar and says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to tell him, be aware, I made sure to wake you up many times at night. This is the first medical diagnosis for insomnia. Hashem wants a person to pass Yom Adin, so he doesn't let him fall asleep at night, so he should listen to Shiurei Torah, learn Torah at night, and like this he'll be able to tell Hashem, I learned Torah at night. Because it's a chiyuv, perek echad bayom, perek echad balayla, it's a chiyuv to learn Torah at night. When we wake up in the middle of the night, oof, I woke up. All right, let's go downstairs. In the best case, flip a few channels, drink something, some tea, I don't know what, look around the walls, get frustrated again. If we're not on a diet, eat some more calories, some popcorn, some ice cream, go back into bed, twist and turn even more frustrated, and hopefully at one point fall asleep, and then wake up late the next day. Shaita, fool. The Zohar says, Hashem woke you up to do a favor for you. That in Yom Adin you should be okay. Besides, it happens to be that if you have a sefer near your bed, you open it up, the second you start learning, the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to learn, he puts you right back to sleep. You sleep very well. Not everybody, but most people. Some people it's just the opposite. If you have a sefer, now it's interesting, you don't want to go back to sleep anymore. But most people, the Amonah and the Yetzer Hara comes and puts them right back to sleep. But for that, you need those naim karita. You have to have ears that hear. You have to think straight. What does Rabban Shalom want from me? By the way, in the Biur God says, like said this in Shiurim primarily during Elul time over the years, that if somebody wakes up at night or can't fall asleep at night, the reason is because at that point in Shamayim they're judging him. And if he's sleeping, then he's going to be judged without a way to defend himself. So Hashem doesn't let him fall asleep or wakes him up. So like this, he should be able to be mehared tshuva, to think thoughts of tshuva, and pass the judgment in heaven. It's not me saying, it's not a Sgula book or a Facebook rabbi or God forbid or whatever. That's Gaon Mivilna, the Havdil. Gaon Mivilna, that's what he writes. So a lot of times Hashem tries to wake us up, but not always do we wake up. Not always do we wake up, yeah. I had a friend in San Francisco, Israeli guy. I won't elaborate. He's a fashion designer. You can understand the rest of the package. So, but we're friendly for many years. And sometimes I try to speak to him a little bit Torah, a little bit that. But he's in a different world. He's in a very tough position because if there's a Hashem and there's a Torah, so then he can't live the life that he lives anymore. He's in a tough spot, let's just say that. But anyway, I try to salvage whatever's left. So one day, I was traveling, it was a few years ago, I don't remember exactly. And normally we speak once in a while, whatever it is. Not that frequent, but when we sit, and we make up a time that we text for a minute, hi, how are you? And then we say, okay, I'll speak to you tomorrow at this time, whenever my schedule and his schedule don't collide. So we made up to speak the next day. And we made up a time, and I made a calculation of the time difference of where I was and where he is. I wasn't in New York, I was traveling. And I made a mental note in my head to call him at that time the next day, based on my time where I was, to call, to speak to him. I was going to try again my agenda during that period of time was to convince him to start putting on tefillin. Because schar mitzvah, schar avera, avera, that they do other averot, fine, but you don't also have to do another avera of not putting on tefillin, put on tefillin, what does one have to do with the other? Kids, I don't know, I guess my calculation of hours was wrong, I'm not sure what it was. I ended up calling him at some weird hour, and he picked up the phone because he saw it was me, and he was a little bit annoyed, and he says, didn't we make up? I said, yeah, no, that's why I'm calling you now. He said, you got the time wrong. I said, listen, I'm in another country, I'm not good at math, I don't know what you want from me. I tried to figure it out, I thought this was the time. I'm sorry. He says, well, I'm in the middle of taking a nap, I'm going back to sleep, call me when we made up. I told him, but you're already up anyway. What do I have to call you back? Bye. And he hangs up the phone. 10 minutes later, he calls me back. 15 minutes later, maybe. I thought he couldn't fall back asleep anyway, so he called back to give me a little blessing, as they say, in quotations. He calls back and he tells me, what do you want? I said, nothing. We made up yesterday we were going to talk. Once in a while we talk and that. So I called you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I was waiting for the attack. I said, I didn't mean to wake you and that. It's Gezel Shena. Please forgive me. I didn't calculate the hours right. It's confusing enough from where I am to New York, to LA, to San Francisco. I mean, it's even worse. I can't. So he tells me, no, that's not why I'm asking you. I said, what? He said, 3 minutes ago, I went back, I said, I'm going back to sleep, and I was angry at you. And there was an earthquake. My whole building shook, and now I'm wide awake. I said, you see, you caused the earthquake in San Francisco. They should sue you. I said, if it was up to me, I would go to the media and tell the governor to sue you of California. I said, Hashem wanted you to be up, because he wanted to save your life. You didn't want to be up. He said, I'll shake the whole city for you. I said, now you're willing to hear what I want to say? He said, what do you want from me? He tells me, what do you want from me? I told him, I want you to go put on tefillin today. Here's the name and number of a Chabad rabbi. It's a friend of mine. You go to him, you put on tefillin today. He says, what tefillin? Afilu ba bar mitzvah lo inachti. Even in my bar mitzvah. I said, you never had a bar mitzvah at all. He said, I had a party, but I didn't put on tefillin. I said, no, you got it all wrong. You had a bar without the mitzvah. That's what you had. You had 50%, half the job, a bar. You got stuck before the mitzvah. So today you'll go do the other half, the mitzvah part. I'm not so in touch with him anymore over the years, but once in a while we are, holiday season or whatever. And he tells me until today he puts on tefillin every day. It's a shame, Hashem had to shake up a whole city for him to put on tefillin. But it's worth it for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to shake the whole San Francisco for one Jew to put on tefillin. Literally, not an exaggeration, literally it's worth it. But why do we have to get to that? Why can't we just hear the message without the world shaking under us and without the world going into chaos? You could see Hashem without problems and that would be a lot better. Abisel Salanta, the founder of the Musar movement. He was the Rebbe of legendary rabbis that we know, Abshon Chazisa from Kelm, Avtali Amsterdam, many Gdolei Olam he built under the Musar movement afterwards. K'doshei Elyon. How did he become the Gdol Ador, the founder of the Musar movement? He was once, as a little child, walking, and he met a tzaddik nista, his name was Abzundel Salant. And Abzundel Salant saw a young kid with a pure face, an innocent child, and he turned to him and he told him a few words, 4 words in total. Lemad Musar v'tiyeh tzaddik. If you learn Musar, you'll become a tzaddik. Abisel Salanta was a child. He would have told him, I'm busy playing in the sand now. He got up from there, he started learning Musar, he built the Musar movement, and until today, Am Yisrael owes him Hakarat HaTov, that who knows if that's not what protected whatever was left of the European Jewry from Tnuat Haskalah, from the Reform movement. From 4 words. So, we asked about the bat kol. The bat kol comes out. The question is, if we hear the bat kol when it comes out, or we choose to ignore the bat kol. We really have to be careful that we should listen to the bat kol. And many other bat kols that come out. Look in the Gemara, there's a long list of them, including one that says, Shuvu banim shovavim. And if somebody doesn't listen to a message that Hashem's sending him, then he goes to the opposite extreme. All this hate in Israel against Bnei Torah and Talmidei Chachamim that's been going on, where does it come from? It comes because they know the truth better than us. They know they're wrong better than we do. None of them think they're right. In case we needed a live example, this week we lost many Gdolei Yisrael. It's a very sad week. It's a very, very scary week for Am Yisrael. Rabbi Yitzchak Shiner, Rabbi David Soloveitchik. We're talking about Ziknei Rashei Yeshivot, the great Rashei Yeshivot, from Brisk, from Kamenetz, Torah legends, people that went Torah 85, 90 years straight, non-stop. And they made a funeral. I'm not saying right, wrong, I'm not getting involved in these stupid conversations. 10,000 students went to the funeral. To them it's a father, more than a father, it's the Gdol Ador died. And the Israeli media was all over it. The religious Jews spread illness and this and that and everything. It's like Trump used to say China virus, they call it Bnei Brak virus. That's it. All over it. Every newscast, every hour, every radio, every TV, that's all they spoke about. As if there's no problems in the country. Just the funeral of a great rabbi. That was outdoors and people were spread apart. That's the problem. Hashem saw they don't want to listen. So he gave them a chance to do tshuva. The next day, the police went into an Arab village. And they went to go after some mafia family over there. And one of these gangsters pulled out a Uzi to start shooting at the police. So the police shot back at him. And instead of hitting him, they also hit him at the end. But first, they hit a bypasser, an innocent bystander. And even though he's not Jewish and he's Muslim and everything, the loss of life is tragic. And there's nothing right about that. That's very sad. It should never happen. And that I say clearly. But the Arabs took it as the Israeli police killed one of us. And what did they do on Wednesday? They made a funeral. How many people were by the funeral? 10,000. The same number that was by David Soloveitchik's funeral. And nobody in the media said a word. Because they were expressing their pain. Not only didn't they say anything negative, they were being sympathetic to them. Only a day later, when some of the normal people left in Israel started screaming, there's a limit to hypocrisy. So one newspaper did the world a favor and put like a little article on talking about it. Where does this sinat Talmidei Chachamim come from? Because when Hashem sends a message, and you don't take the message the right way, then it causes you to hate. Where do we know this from? Right at the beginning of the Chumash Bereshit, the fourth parak of Chumash Bereshit. There were two brothers, Cain and Hevel. They both came to an observation that if Hashem gave us the world, we have to show Him thanks. How do we show Him thanks? By bringing a sacrifice. Cain said, a sacrifice means we're burning it. If we're burning it anyway, why use something expensive? It's getting burnt. Let's use something cheap. Hevel said, despite the fact that it's being burnt, at the end of the day, it's not respectful to show God something that's not the biggest and the best. Hashem accepted Hevel's korban, sacrifice, and didn't accept Cain's korban. Cain, at that point, instead of learning from his mistake and bringing a new one the right way, was jealous of Hevel and got angry. God saw he got angry, he decided to reach out to him. And God himself goes to speak to Cain. The pasuk says, "Vayichal leCain me'od." Cain got very angry. Vayipu panav, his face fell. He was depressed. And Hashem himself came to him and told him, "Im teitiv," say it. If you'll do tshuva, meaning you'll understand your mistake and do it the right way, great. But if not, lapetach chatat u'revetz, you could end up in the worst situation. And what ended up happening? Cain killed his brother. Wait a second. Just a few seconds ago, Hashem, God himself, spoke to you directly. How do you go be a murderer right after that? That's the answer. You could hear anything, you could see anything. If you're not interested in it coming in, then not only won't it benefit you, it'll cause you harm, and you'll do harm to the world with it. Cain spoke to Hashem, and instead of making him a tzaddik like Hevel, it turned him into a murderer. And but listen to Advar Pella, and with this we'll conclude. Wow. The Zohar Kadosh writes in this week's parasha, one of the words, one of the names, we said Yitro had many names, one of the names of Yitro was Kaini. That was one of his names, Kaini. Why was his name Kaini? Comes the Zohar and says that Yitro was a reincarnation of Cain. He was a Gilgul of Cain. And he came to be mitaken, to correct the sin of Cain. Cain's sin was that he didn't listen to what God had to say. Yitro came back to the world and heard the message of God and left 70 different types of Avodah Zarah, left his position as the top priest just to come closer to Hashem. It's in Tikunei HaZohar Kuf Yudchet Bet if you want to know the source. And the Zohar writes, that's why the pasuk says, Mibnei Kaini Choten Moshe. What made him the father-in-law Moshe Rabbeinu? What made him this great man that Hashem himself went to Moshe to tell him to give him respect and to greet him? The fact that he was willing to listen. And as a result of listening, he took action, did a brit milah, became part of Am Yisrael. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And that's why the Torah begins, and the parasha is not called Parashat Aseret HaDibrot. Because Hashem can come down on a mountain and there could be quiet in the whole world, and kolot u'brakim by the mountain and everything, and say Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and nothing's going to come out of it. Zero. Like all the big events that organizations made over the years that nothing ever came out of. One person that actually wants to listen, something comes out of. Cain wanted to listen. He wasn't inspired. Cain didn't want to listen. I mean, Yitro wanted to listen. He wasn't inspired. Cain was inspired. Inspiration causes murder. Yitro listened. He was mitaken Cain. Kaini, Cain. He took Cain and added on Yud, Hashem's name, and turned into. That's why to say, call it the Parashat Aseret HaDibrot or Matan Torah is worthless. Because you could have Matan Torah, but it's not going to affect anybody. It's not going to help anybody. The Torah says, you know when Matan Torah is worth something? Vayishma Yitro. If you're willing to listen to to what the Aseret HaDibrot say. If you're willing to hear the Aseret HaDibrot, then there's a Aseret HaDibrot. But if not, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah, Aseret HaDibrot, congratulations. It's like all of us, sometimes somebody goes to a funeral, we should never know and never need to go. There should be no more sick people, no more dying people. And he comes home and he says, this person was so young, he was my good friend, he died, so sad. And 10 minutes later, he's fighting with his wife over the color of paint that they're going to paint the dining room. Wait a second, didn't you just see in front of your face what life is worth? And that in 1 second Hashem could take it away from you? How did it go from that in 3 seconds to the color of the paint on the wall? Or to even a stupid argument. You blocked my car in the driveway, I don't know what. Because there's no Vayishma Yitro. There's no V'achai Yiten Libo. You didn't realize, you didn't internalize what you just experienced. Yeah, it was so sad. So sad, yeah. It's about as sad as the Black Lives Matter people were when that guy was killed. That type of sad. Let's go loot Breitling. But we all do that. It's not only them, we all do that. Maybe we don't loot, but instead we loot our Yetzer Tov. Take it in, absorb what Hashem is doing to you, what Hashem is showing you, what Hashem is teaching you. Take it in, absorb it. You'll become a better person. It'll make an impact on your life. It'll make a difference in your life. And if you got to a point that nothing works, so daven to Hashem. Somebody told me one day, I want to pray, but I can't pray. I can't. I have issues with God. I can't pray. I said, I agree with you. I understand you. So I have a solution for you. Instead of saying, Modeh Ani, until Hashem heals your soul, Be'ezah Hashem soon. Talking about an extreme case, nobody should learn from this halakha l'maaseh. Get up and say, God, I wish I could pray, but right now I can't. I'm blocked. Help me develop a relationship with you that one day I should be able to pray. I said, and I'm telling you, that prayer is going to do a lot more than all your prayers in your life together, probably, if you mean it. Start with that. I'll tell you an interesting social experiment that I've done countless times, especially in Israel. In Israel, this works better because of the Israeli mentality. A lot of times I go speak in places that the people identify themselves as non-believers. And I clearly say they identify themselves like that. They're not really like that. For many reasons, including the fact that I happen not to believe that they don't believe. So I tell them, years ago there were still intellects in the world, so we used to speak serious speeches to prove the existence of God. And today there's unfortunately nobody to listen, so you could speak all you want, they fall asleep in 3 seconds. So you got to talk instant, Instagram style. Something flashy, quick, exciting. That should hit home very quick, very hard. So I always do the same thing. I look for the wisecrack in the room. Who's the ringleader, we call it. And normally it's done by a simple survey. Who has the most followers? And I ask the question, somebody says me, and they compete, 14,000, 20,000, 32,000, 800,000. I find the guy with the biggest number, or girl with the biggest number. I say, come sit near me. You believe in God? No. Beyond reasonable doubt, you're sure you don't believe? No. Torah is true? No. Sure? Yeah, 100% sure. So we're going to make an experiment together. Say after me word for word. Sure, what do you want? So then you could do a live story if you want. Take your phone, selfie, whatever. So put a story. It'll be interesting. It'll be fun. And they fall for it. It's good. And the fun comes out and everything. I make sure I look good. Everything's fine. And I say, God, if you exist, show me your existence. Show me the Torah and make sure I keep every last detail of it. And they stop repeating the words at a certain point. Halfway in when they realize what's going on. And then I look at the person and I say, wait a second. You just announced in front of everybody that you don't believe in God and you don't believe in the Torah. So if there's no God and there's no Torah, so what's the big deal to say it? Who cares? You're talking to the wall. So what's the answer? You believe more than I believe. You have more Yirat Shamayim than I have. Just, you had 800,000 followers on Instagram, so it's a big problem. You can't give up on it. But guess what? We just put a live story, so they all busted your lie now, so you may want to change your ways. And it works. You can take countless people that change their life around just from that alone. If there's no God, so what are you scared to say? All you're doing is saying words. Talk to the wall, okay? Won't be the first time you speak to yourself, you know. Every time somebody does something that somebody else doesn't like, you hear the other guy walking away mumbling, right? People talk to themselves all day. Thank God today for AirPods. That makes all the people that talk to themselves, instead of insane, sophisticated, because it's as if they're on the phone. That's one of the accomplishments of Apple. They took a crazy world and made it look normal. Or at least they think they did. But, yeah. So even if a person, chas v'sholom, is in a matzav that he doesn't see Hashem and whatever, he doesn't feel Hashem, and with today's suffering, it's a big test. As I said, the Amoraim said, Yetei v'lach mineh, they don't want to live in this generation. And Hashem accepted their prayers. He took them before. But Afal Pikein, that much everybody could do, to daven to Hashem, that at least we should want to pray. Daven to Hashem, at least we should want to keep mitzvot. Even if we're not keeping the way we should. At least we should want to have boundaries one day in life. At least we should want to do the right thing. At least that much. Daven to Hashem to get to that point, at least that. And when Hashem sees somebody prays to Him, saying that He wants to get closer to Him, Hashem says, you want to get closer to you? Just like Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu about Yitro. If He wanted to get closer to me, now send 3 million people, the whole Am Yisrael, go greet Him. And by now, it's all the nishmot of all the tzaddikim and all the generations. Come greet this great neshama and give him strength that wants to get closer to Hashem. Hashem should help. There should be no more sickness and tzar in Klal Yisrael, no more suffering in any way, shape, or form. Hashem should help. We should all be protected and happy and healthy. Hashem should wipe out all our enemies b'meira, and we should be successful. Adei ad, amen v'amen. Shabbat shalom v'orach.